Good evening, and welcome in everybody to another episode of Cap and Trade. I am your host, Texans Cap. You can follow me on Twitter at Texans Cap, or if you prefer the written form, capandtrade.substack.com. A lot of big news to get to tonight. Welcome in everybody. Hey Sam, good to see you, buddy. See Tony out there in the crowd. John, good to see you. Yeah, Tony, man, trying to get a little more active, trying to get a little more out there. So, just like I said, ton to get to tonight. I mean, there's a big Friday Friday news dump. Um, just a lot to get to. I mean, a big trade across the league, some news with the Texans. How does the trade affect everything? So, let's get right into it. So, right off the top, we saw Carolina trades, jumps up to number one, trading with Chicago, trading a big fortune, but that was to be expected, making a move from 9-1. You all saw the trade details, including DJ Moore, which I thought was an excellent asset to add to that. DJ Moore is probably better than any wide receiver in this draft. Is still young, has 3 years of contract left at reasonable numbers. It's just a solid move by Ryan Poles all around. So, it'd been brewing for about, I guess, probably about a week. Coming out of the combine, I started getting some tidbits from it. If you're in the if you're in the Discord that I'm in, you would have seen that I posted a message about watch out for Carolina moving up to number 3 for Stroud, and then you saw Patrick Storm post a screenshot from a text message about shit's brewing at number 1. That was my text message. So, stuff started really getting hot and heavy come Wednesday this week. I started getting some messages, some offline messages, and I didn't know that. I didn't really think Carolina was going to make the move. I really thought that the place to trade up to was going to be number 3 with Arizona. And to me, this tells me that Indy was big on Stroud. I think Carolina is very big on Stroud. I think Carolina is definitely gonna go Stroud number 1. It would be my guess today, and I think the betting markets will agree with that. This was to me, this was a bidding war between Indianapolis and Carolina, and there was even rumors that Las Vegas was involved, and so who was going to make the big leap? And we saw Carolina make the big leap. And I think this is Dave Tepper, who's a very aggressive person, the owner of the Carolina Panthers, pushing his folks to make the move now. And I think both sides wanted to make the move now. I think Carolina wanted to make the move now. If you've been listening to the show, I've been saying that. I think we had Brad Spielberger on this past Wednesday, who's real tied into Chicago, and he pretty much hinted at that they want to get this done sooner rather than later, so that they can not only know their path for the draft, but also how that ties into their free agency for 2 fronts. A, what kind of positions do they want to look at in free agency? And 2, do they want to use any of that additional draft capital to take on a big contract? Well, you see, they took on a big contract with DJ Moore. Doesn't exclude them from doing it somewhere else, but Chicago has to spend a ton of money to meet the 3-year cash spending window requirements, which is 90% of the cap over a 3-year span. I think Brad did the math. It's something like they got to spend like $240 million this year, just a very aggressive number. So Carolina makes the move. I feel like it's definitely Stroud all the way. And what does this mean for Houston? I mean, this is like a perfect situation for Houston. And for the last 2.5 months, 3 months, been lamenting Lovie Smith and the Texans beating the Colts week 18, losing out on that number 1 draft pick. And now, lo and behold, now this is me assuming that Houston's in on Bryce Young. And we don't know that for sure, but it feels like that's possibly the path forward for Houston. So they can just sit tight, man. Just hang out right there. Grab Bryce Young and have no worries and move on forward. I don't think a trade down makes any sense for them. I think it's going to be Indianapolis has got to worry about somebody like Las Vegas or Atlanta potentially jumping up from 8 to number 3 with Arizona. I think that's still a real possibility. So I think Indianapolis is the biggest loser out of this situation for sure. And and another point with Carolina making this move up, I think Frank Wright spent some time in Indianapolis. We all know that. He's well aware of Frank Wright. I mean, Frank Wright. He's well aware of Jim Irsay and how cavalier he can be, how off the cuff he can be. It wouldn't shock me if him and Tepper and Scott Fitter or the GM came together and said, we know that Irsay could just go wild and do something off the wall and overrule Ballard and make us some crazy moves. So let's make the move now, get it done, add a little bit to the package and get this trade done so we know we can get our guy. So that's what I think. And Sam's right on it. Yeah. So odds right now on Stroud going number 1 are minus 425. So, I mean, right now it is heavy Stroud at number 1, puts Houston in the drive seat at number 2. I see there's a comment up here from Josh. Good to see you, Josh. Time to discuss trade down scenarios. Man, I'm not on the trade down scenario. I think you stay put, get Bryce Young. And I understand it. If you're not a big Bryce Young fan, hey, maybe you're ready to move down. I think there's a real chance the quarterback could go 1, 2, 3. I said that on the show the other night. I think there's a big divide for Anthony Richardson across the league. There's some teams that don't even have him in their top 10. Houston is one of those, I feel. And there's other teams that probably have him ranked pretty high. And some teams may be willing to make the move and jump up to number 3 for Anthony Richardson and have quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. I think Jalen Carter is going to maybe slide a little bit, but not too much. He'll stay in the top 10. But I mean, just to me, this is just perfect for Houston. Absolutely perfect. I don't think it could have gotten any better for them. Benjamin Albright called it in December. Yeah, that dude stays on stuff, man. He's pretty well plugged in. Sometimes he has his misses, and just like everybody, we all have misses, man. I said on this show 3 weeks ago with Randy Mueller, the GM for the Seattle Sea Dragons, we both agreed that there was just no way that Chicago was going to be able to trade out of that pick. And it was like a domino effect. The Carter news, then CJ Stroud having an excellent combine, Anthony Richardson having an excellent combine. I think Stroud did well in interviews, Richardson not so much, but it's just like a domino. Just things started happening. And you come out of Indy, and now it's all of a sudden, yeah, Chicago's going to be able to move that pick. And Poles was very vocal about it. And, hey, more power to him, man. I didn't think he was going to be able to do it, but he did it. So Chicago fans are happy. That's really cool, man. I mean, I'm sure the NFL would have loved to have waited for something like this to happen like draft week, but Chicago obviously wanted to get it done now. Carolina wanted to get it done now to make sure they have it done and ready to go so that they can pick their guy. So with that, Houston staying at number 2, hopefully. I don't foresee a trade down scenario, but there's some news with them as well. So they've made a few signings this week, and a couple different moves. So some lower level signings. Scott Quesenberry signed back. He'll be a backup depth center. Small guarantee. Haven't heard the exact details on it. It sounds like a $2.1 million base value up to $3 million. We'll kind of see what guarantee, but I can't be more than $750,000 or so. The other signing was MJ Stewart, safety, special teams, ace for Houston. I think that's a really good signing. So 2 years, $6 million for him, $3 million guaranteed. He'll be your safety number 3-4, depending on who else they sign or if they keep Eric Murray. But he's very, very good on special teams, and we know this organization values special teams. They were a top 3 special teams unit last year. Frank Ross, special team coach, stayed on with the new staff. So I think that's a great signing and perfectly happy with that. And then we saw the news today, Robert Woods, or not today, but this evening, here in the past, 2 hours, Robert Woods signed with Houston. I'm a bit not 100% sold on that. I mean, I get it. I understand you want a veteran presence for a rookie quarterback. You want that for a young wide receiver room, which this is probably going to end up being a young wide receiver room. He's a very, very good run blocker, which is very, very much needed for this scheme, for this zone running scheme. You need wide receivers that can get downfield and block. Um, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, he's kind of a short intermediate guy. He's not gonna break away from anybody. He's not gonna take the table off the field or anything like that. He's not gonna get big separation. Talk to a couple of guys up in Tennessee. But at Tennessee, of course, they're going to be a little bit jaded with him, and it's hard to get an unbiased review on Robert Woods. But I mean, he is what he is. I mean, he's 2 years removed from the ACL, so maybe he'll have a little more spring in his step this year. Looks like 10 million guaranteed on a 2-year, 15 million deal with some incentives on top of that. So, hey, I'm not going to complain about it. It just wasn't my fair choice. I mean, his age is a little bit of concern for me. You really, theoretically, based on what we saw in San Francisco, you want players that can get yards after the catch, that can create separation and get that yak after the catch. So to me, that's not what a Robert Woods guy is. But at the end of the day, this is probably, even though it's a 2-year deal, it's probably a 1-year deal, and then we'll see in year 2. So it doesn't preclude this team from drafting a wide receiver early. I don't know that wide receiver is going to be high on the board at number 2. Really, about the only guy that I would love to take at number 12 would be Jackson Smith-Njigba. But really, anybody else, I think there's going to be some good value on wide receivers on early day 2, maybe with that pick 33. Maybe you move up. Maybe you move back out of 33. Maybe you move back out of 12 and get some extra ammunition. But that would be my read on the situation. And at the end of the day, it seems like this is just another step and precursor to Brandon Cooks being on his way out. I don't think, he had one of his another cryptic tweets today, like he likes to do. And it kind of just alluded that his culture, his attitude will work well elsewhere, which is fine. Fine by me. I think it's fine by most of Houston fans that want him out of here. And, we'll kind of see what kind of trade Caserio can work up for Brandon Cooks. I can't imagine it being more than a fourth or fifth round pick. They may have to take on some of the contract, but, hey, we'll have to see what happens. If you got any questions, comments, throw them up on the board. We'll get to as much as we can tonight. I do have a few adult beverages, so be around for a little bit. If you're new to the show, make sure you hit subscribe, hit that like button, helps out the show. We talk everything here across the league. This is not just a Houston Texans podcast, although the Texans are my specialty. So happy to talk wherever we like. So John says, man, I like Stroud. I like Stroud too. I just like Bryce Young more. I think Bryce Young, thanks H-Town for the sub, man. Yeah, I mean, Stroud's a good, safe pick. He just doesn't have that buzz to him, right? But he's got the prototypical size. He's got a good arm. He's very accurate. He feels like a very conservative type player. And, Frank Wright, I think that'll be a good place for him. But I'm all on the Bryce Young train. And we'll talk about some other options there as well. I wanted to get to some of these questions. So Tony says, bring back Ben Jones. Hey, I mean, he turned what? He's 34 or he turns 34 in August or something like that. So I think that's, wouldn't hurt my feelings, but I think there's probably a few other options out there that might be better. But if Ben Jones wants to play, the dude is just a machine. He plays through every kind of injury. He is a very, very good quality center, it would just be a short-term solution. The free agency market with centers is pretty weak. There's only a couple of players out there. You know, Bradbury up in Minnesota, Ethan Pochik out of Cleveland, which I think players who go to Cleveland and who play offensive line in Cleveland under Bill Callahan probably get a little inflated because he's probably one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm not saying he would be bad. And I'm not saying that Chris Hauser is not as good as Callahan, but just get a little leery when I see, a player coming from that. Same thing like if you got a player coming from a Mike Munchak line or Dante Scarnecchia line, they just don't seem to play as well when they go elsewhere. So, those players, and then once you drop below them, Jake Brendel out of San Francisco, which obviously Bobby Sloak would have some common interest with him. And then Connor McGovern up in New York. I think he's a little bit older as well. He's 32, but coming out of the same system, right? He played for Jets the last 2 years, played for that same system that LaFleur was running up there before he got let go. So, there's some options, but, Ben Jones, I wouldn't be against it. I won't be mad at it. I'll say that much. Cooks for Slay. Whew. Slay's going to want a new deal. I don't know. I mean, I like Steven Nelson. I think he's got 1 year left on his contract. I think he's still a very acceptable cornerback. He's not a game changer, and he's above replacement level. He's like a top 30 kind of cornerback, and Derek Stingley on the other side. So, I don't know. I don't think the Darius Slay thing is the route to go for this team. I think he's going to command a big contract, and I think that's why Philadelphia has given him permission to seek a trade. It doesn't sound like he asked for it, but I think that basically Howie Roseman presented his contract to Darius Slay, and they said no, thank you. And then Howie Roseman said, "Well, why don't you go see what the market can get you and come back?" So that would be my take on that. I'm certainly not opposed to it, but I mean, he's 32, and that's a little bit of concern. Like, when does the decline start? And it's hard to project that, especially if you're going to give a guy with a new deal that's going to probably be at least 2 years guaranteed. So that would be my concern with Darius Slay. Let's see here. Travis says, I would like to see a little less guaranteed money for Woods, but I think it's decent. Yeah, and Titans didn't give him zero help, and I get that. And he's, like I said, he's 2 years removed from the ACL, so maybe he's getting a little more juice in the knees. I don't know if it's $10 million guaranteed at signing or if it's $10 million total guarantees. Sometimes these things get a little inflated when they come out right off the bat like that. Agents are usually pushing the narrative to get the biggest numbers per trade out there. So let's wait. It's probably going to be Monday. I usually don't get contract updates on Sunday. And we'll see if those people are working Saturday night. Maybe I'll get the details on Sunday, but it's usually like a two-day floating period from whenever the contract's signed to where I get like the true details of it. So, like I said, I mean, I get the Robert Woods sign. I agree. I think it's a little rich, but hey, let's see what happens there. So, talked about the Texans, talked about that. So, one thing I wanted to talk about, and I had all kinds of fun stuff tonight. I was really mad about the Carolina trade because I had full intentions of coming on here tonight, staking my claim that Carolina was going to trade up to number 1. And I know that's easy to say. You probably don't believe me, and that's fine. And I got the bid up, and I was going to come here for like, Carolina's going to trade number 1. Just watch. And they beat me to the point. So, Jair, good to see you, bud. With Wood signed, does it make sense to get Cooks trade done before free agency? Yeah, I mean, I think you want to get it done as soon as you can. I think that's $10 million in cap space that you can maybe reallocate to the rest of the roster in free agency. And the sooner the better. I don't think there's any like deadlines or timelines. But if it's going to get done, you hope it gets done early in free agency. But if they don't get the right offer on their table, then maybe you wait till draft night, and then you can make it part of the draft trades and get it done that way. Maybe you find a team who was looking for a wide receiver, they missed out on him in the second round or something like that. Day three, Saturday morning comes up, you start day three picks, fourth round, and then maybe the team's willing to make a move for Cooks. So, hopefully they get it done. I think he's gone one way or another, whether it's now or in a week or in a month. So, one thing I wanted to talk about tonight as well was Jimmy Garoppolo and the news and the grumblings about that. I'll toss up my had a contract proposal set up, and I got to figure out how I can open that. So there was some grumblings. I think Jonathan Jones put a note out that someone on the staff was looking at potentially, pushing for Jimmy Garoppolo to be signed and be brought in and let the rookie sit. And I think that's a mistake. I'm not big on Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think that's a good move to come here. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is quietly a distraction. I'm trying to figure out the best way to frame this, because I just don't think he's what you want for your rookie quarterback. I don't think he's that good mentor type player. And I don't believe in, especially if you're going to draft a quarterback at number 2, that you need that guy to get reps. You need him to play. And that means less reps for him in training camp, less reps for him in preseason. And if you start Jimmy Garoppolo over, let's just say for the sake of this discussion, Bryce Young has taken number 2, right? So you have Bryce Young, and then if you end up signing Jimmy Garoppolo to this roster, and then you have Davis Mills on this roster, and you start Jimmy Garoppolo citing that Bryce Young is not ready, it's a whole nother situation that we had in 2017. But as soon as Jimmy Garoppolo starts playing bad, the fans, everybody's going to be clamoring for Bryce Young. And then it just then you're making quarterback swaps in the middle of the season. You're trying to wait for the bye week, whatever. It's just not good. And I don't want somebody, I don't even want Jimmy Garoppolo if they didn't draft a quarterback at number 2. I just don't want Jimmy Garoppolo here. But let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that the team looks at signing Jimmy Garoppolo. And I'll just show you real quick what a potential deal. So this is what the numbers that I came up with after I talked to a few people about what his market value is going to be. And it's really kind of all over the place. And this is kind of what I came up with based on talking to a lot of folks. Would be 12 million total, 7 million signing bonus, 4 million full guaranteed salary, 1 million in per game roster bonuses, and then 8 million in incentives. And this is broken down by MVP, getting a Pro Bowl, having a completion percentage of 68% or more, passing yards 2,500, 3,000, 3,500, 4,000, broken up. I think it's I think I have it at 250,000, 500,000, 500,000, 750,000, something like that. I got up to 3 million in incentives through team wins. So if the more the team wins, the more money Garoppolo earns. Playoff win, conference championship, Super Bowl champion. Just a big breakdown of incentives, totaling 8 million. So he could earn up to 20 million. But this is, it's to be just a 1-year deal. I'm not giving Jimmy Garoppolo anything beyond 1 year. I'm not taking on that injury protection concerns. So that would just be my my estimation on a contract if Houston were to sign a Jimmy Garoppolo. But I don't think it's a very good idea. I think it's something you want to avoid. Like I said, I don't think he's the mentor type quarterback. I think he's more of worried about what's best for Jimmy. Um, I'm trying not to be rude, trying not to be, hateful or anything like that. It's just my honest opinion. It's my read on the situation. And, talking to a few people who's been in the same building with him, I just don't foresee him being that guy. So 12 million fully guaranteed, or 11 million fully guaranteed with 8 million in incentives, another million in roster bonuses. That would be my take on the Jimmy Garoppolo situation. So let's hope that let's hope that they don't go down that path. And if you really want to bring in a bigger name veteran, then go get Jacoby Brissett. That's who I would want as the big name veteran backup. That would just, but what really should happen is you get Bryce Young, Davis Mills is your QB2, go sign and I'm not saying this person specifically, but a Case Keenum type as your quarterback 3 for veteran. And then you have EJ Perry, who they picked up on waivers. He'll be your fourth quarterback, because you need 4 quarterbacks in training camp. So that would be my take on the situation when it comes to quarterback. Beige, was good to see you, man. For drafting a QB high, we can't bring in Jimmy. Way too many resources. Yeah, I'm right with you there. There's no need to bring in Jimmy. No need. Even if you're gonna bypass quarterback at number 2, no, I just don't even want it. No, thank you. I threw yeah. That's pretty much so. Jimmy doesn't have to be a mentor. Why do you guys want for the E this so bad? Not quite sure what you're trying to say there, Eduardo, but bring back AJ McCarron. He's tearing it up in the XFL, man. But no, there's other ways to go about it. I think you need to find another veteran, but you don't need to allocate that much to it. I think if you're going to bring in Bryce Young or another quarterback not named Bryce Young, that's the way to go. So, pick number 12. How should Houston handle that? There's talks that you can look at wide receiver. Edge is probably is another big need for this team, and maybe a couple guys will drop down. It seems like Luke Van Ness seems to always kind of be in most of the mock drafts around that pick, that slot number 12. But I think the biggest move there will probably be a move back, right? A trade back out of number 12. Hopefully you have somebody, maybe a quarterback slides, or Witherspoon or Joey Porter, or Christian Gonzalez or Joey Porter. One of those 3 guys start sliding back, and somebody's willing to trade up for one of the cornerbacks. Those are the top 3. So I think the wide receiver is going to slide down a little bit. So I think there's a good opportunity for Nick to trade back out of 12, slide back 5, 6, 7 slots, and then get one of the edge guys, one of the defensive players there. Maybe a defensive tackle's on your board. You can target one of them towards the end of the round. But the only wide receiver I would take in the first round is Njigba, and that's really my only one that I really like. If you get into top of round 2, then that's where you start looking at the Zay Flowers, players like that. But I'm not interested in Jordan Addison. I'm not really interested in Quentin Nelson or Quentin Johnston. I'm not really interested in those guys. So I think, with the Robert Woods thing, and there's really just no game-changing wide receivers in this draft. So I really think you need to find somebody with speed is what this team really is going to need. You're going to have Robert Woods. You're going to have Nico Collins and hopefully John Mechie. We don't want to count on him. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to anybody. But, for the sake of the argument, you have him and then Amari Rogers. So you really need a speed guy, somebody who can really take the top off the defense. maybe that's someone like a Jalen Hyatt at the top of the second round at pick 33, something like that. And that's a player that this team really sorely needs. Or you look at free agency like a Mecole Hardman or something like that. Just somebody who's got straight line burner speed. They can get behind the defense to open things up in the middle of the field. A lot of this offensive scheme, especially if you look at Mike McDaniels, really predicates creating the center of the field being wide open. So that's how that's the read on pick number 12. I think it's going to change, obviously, as we get through free agency over the next, 3 or 4 weeks. I think we've got like 46 days or 48 days, depending on the, before we get to the draft. So things are going to change. But today, yeah, I think it's definitely got to be defense or a trade back and, try to find you a good player, get some more ammunition for day 2 or day 3. Now we talked about Brandin Cooks. So another thing was today it seemed like a big news dump for releases and restructures. And it felt like I was logged into overthecap.com all day today. I feel like I updated probably 40 or 50 contracts today. A ton of restructures. And it's still a function of those teams that are still kind of buried behind the 8 ball from the pandemic COVID year, where the cap went backwards, really kind of put a lot of teams behind schedule on their cap and their roster building. So we saw a ton of restructuring today. Saw Miami produce over 46 million in restructure cap savings. I think Tampa Bay come through with 44 million in restructures. Carolina's done quite a few restructures, even on top of trading away DJ Moore. Green Bay is already doing their restructures. Los Angeles they did a lot of, releases, and it seems like they were going to do some trades, but they did a few restructures as well. So, just a lot going on from a salary cap standpoint. But the key dates coming up is going to be, so Monday, the 13th at noon is when the noon Eastern, 11 o'clock our time, is when the legal tampering period is going to open up. That's when agents and teams can legally start talking together, even though they've been illegally tampering for 3 weeks now. And then free agency officially opens for players to officially sign the dotted line at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, the 15th. That's when the new league year starts. That's when all the teams need to be salary cap compliant. All tenders, everything, restricted free agents, exclusive rights free agents, all those tenders need to be submitted, things like that. That's when the new league year kicks off. That's when trades will become official that evening, probably around 7 or 8 o'clock, I think is the second transaction wire. It's called the post 4 p.m. transaction wire. So just keep that in mind. This is when a lot of the restructures. We'll probably see some more throughout the weekend and all the way up through the first part of next week on restructures. Speaking of which, Tony wants to know, when is DW4 getting restructured? Yeah, so that'll happen next week. I think they were just waiting to let Baltimore get the tag put on Lamar Jackson. I think they, if they were going to use the exclusive tag, then it's the way you calculate the exclusive tag price is an average of the top 5 cap hits minus like incentives and workout bonuses, but essentially the average of the top 5 cap hits. And so with Cleveland being in the same division, they want to put the hurt on Baltimore. So you leave Deshaun Watson's cap number as high as possible until that tag was applied. So, but since they didn't use the non-exclusive tag, or they did not use the exclusive tag, they used the non-exclusive tag. It doesn't really matter. So they'll process his restructure probably Monday or Tuesday, maybe over the weekend, just whenever. They'll get it done before Wednesday. Cleveland does have automatic conversion rights in the contract. So I looked at the contract itself, looked at the language, and found the paragraph in there that they do have exclusive rights. Mike Fisher sent me a note the other day asking if they had that automatic lever to pull, and sure enough, they do. So they can do it. They don't even need his permission per se. They'll hand him a piece of paper. It's a signing bonus addendum, and it's just an accounting function. They'll just convert X amount of salary to a signing bonus prorated out over the last 4 years of the contract, and he doesn't have to sign a whole new contract, anything like that. He'll receive his money in the exact same manner. He won't get a big $30 million signing bonus in March. He'll still get paid weekly through the season, or if he's on the 36 week pay period. He doesn't get any money up front, anything like that. Not in this case, because it's an automatic conversion right by the team. So let's see here. All right, so Texans probably down to 35 million in space after Maben cut and Woodside. So they were at like 30, 37 with when I put some placeholder numbers in for Stewart and Questenberry. And then Reeves Maben, I think, is 1.75 in savings. Woods is probably going to be 6 million or so cap hit. Probably like 32-ish afterwards, all said and done, 32, 33. So around there. Hopefully we'll get some more details first part of next week. All right, so Sam wants to know, just out of curiosity, what would happen if a team is over the salary cap at the stop of the new league year? So there's a compliance window. It's a 7-day compliance window, but they wouldn't be able to do any business. They wouldn't be able to sign any new players, execute any trades, anything. The league would put a hard stop on them, and they would have that compliance period to become compliant. So they would have to release a player, alter a contract, restructure a player, things like that. So they would just basically be stopped for business. No business until you get this in order, would be how that would work. Tony says Dak costs nearly $60 million next year. Yeah, I know. I was adjusting that contract today, and yeah, they're Dallas, that's what they do. I mean, they've got the 2 void years in there. He's got a roster bonus next year. They'll probably extend him out after this season and lower that number down from 59.4 million. That's just what Dallas does when they get certain players that they know are going to be on their roster for a very long time, like Tyron Smith, Travis Fredericks at the time. Zach Martin, they keep restructuring his contract 3 years in a row now. That's just how their system is built. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way their system is built. They don't spend big in free agency. They never have. They're big on retaining their own players, and they restructure those certain players that are going to be on their roster for a long time. It's just how their system works. It's not, like I said, it's not a bad thing. It's just how their system works. You're hedging on a rising cap year over year. So I was just wondering no, they wouldn't get fined or lose a pick. They would just get stopped for business. You just wouldn't be able to do anything. Everything would be on hold. But I've never seen a team enter a league year not cap compliant. I've been doing this for since 2010. So this is year 13. 13 years now. So I've never seen a team roll in not being cap compliant. They all find a way to get there. Travis says, are there points during the league year where you need to get back to compliance, or can you just go as long as you want to get back? Yeah, so right now, I mean, the teams can be over right now. They just need to be compliant by March 15th when the league year starts. As the season, once the league year starts, they have to stay cap compliant all year, or they can't do deals. If in September or whatever, and they're getting close to pushing the edge on their cap, and they turn in a contract that would put them over the cap, the league's not going to process it. They're not going to let them go beyond the cap. They just won't process the contract. It's not that the team can't go over the cap. The league won't let them. The league reviews the NFL Management Council reviews all the contracts that come in to make sure they're compliant, make sure they're in order, make sure all the information is correct, make sure it meets all the rules of the CBA, meets the 50% down rule, anything like that. And if it puts you in a position as a team that would not be put you over the cap, then they're not going to process it. Simple as that. So one thing I wanted to get back to, I forgot to put it in my notes, was what does Indianapolis do now? This was a big loss for them with Carolina draft moving up to number 1. I think Arizona is still in the driver's seat for potentially getting a trade. Now I feel like it's going to be Las Vegas and Indianapolis in the driver's seat trying to move up maybe to number 3. But it makes you wonder, would Indianapolis maybe pivot to Lamar Jackson? I'm not entirely sure. I don't think anybody is going to put an offer sheet in on Lamar Jackson for 2 reasons. A, I just don't think the league views him as a top tier quarterback. Right or wrong, if you think he's one of the best, hey, I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not going to fight you on it. I personally don't think that. I think it's tough to build an offensive scheme, an offensive system around the way Lamar Jackson plays. And to me, that's difficult to pay that type of contract for that type of player. So it makes me wonder if Jim Irsay turns over and says, let's go after Lamar Jackson. Indianapolis is probably one of the lower cash spending teams in the league. I do track cash spending year over year, and Indianapolis is routinely in the bottom 5. They're a smaller market team. They just don't have the same income and deals that like Philadelphia may have, or Los Angeles or Atlanta. And those teams also just have very, very, very potent owners, right? Irsay is kind of like Cincinnati. They just don't have the cash that some of the other teams have. But maybe they make a move for Lamar. I don't know what makes sense for them, but I feel like they really have got themselves in a hole again. And they're either going to have to take Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. And I'm not convinced that Anthony Richardson's going as high as a lot of the public thinks he will. It just depends on the team. But like I said in the beginning of the show, I think some teams have him graded down very low, and some teams may have a higher grade on him. And it's really hard to know. I mean, Chris Ballard sticks to his traits, very conservative, sticks to his board. But I do think that he was very much in on CJ Stroud. And so I have to just kind of wait and see if they feel like they need to move up to number 3, if they're going to get leapfrogged by Las Vegas or maybe Atlanta, something like that. But just for the whole Lamar thing, and we talked about it on Wednesday with Brad Spielberger, I just don't see any teams putting in an offer sheet for what I talked about, the offensive scheme. Teams just don't like doing work for other teams. Pretty simple. Why do if I'm a team, why am I going to have my salary cap department put in hours, days, put together a contract evaluation for Lamar Jackson, submit the offer sheet just to have Baltimore match it? It sounds like Baltimore will pretty match anything. And on top of that, another thing that has to be considered when you're talking about these teams and wanting to do an offer sheet, you have to have the cap space to make an offer sheet. You can't be sitting like Indianapolis right now is like at 12.8 million in cap space. You can't submit an offer sheet that has a year 1 cap number of 30 million on it for Lamar Jackson on a contract that's worth $50 million a year with a $30 million cap hit with only $12 million in cap space. You have to have cap space to take on that deal. And there's only 2 or 3 teams in the league right now that have room to take on that kind of contract. So if somebody were in Indianapolis, they'd have to restructure players, release players, create cap space only just to submit a contract that Baltimore is ultimately going to match anyway. So I think when you look at it from A, you need cap space to do it, and B, Baltimore is going to match it. Why put in the offer? There's no point, right? I mean, you're just doing work for somebody else. Happy to see Indy burn down internally. Man, they're in a tough spot now. They're in a very tough spot. Um, I don't know what they're going to do now. I don't know if they can't go back to a veteran quarterback, right? I mean, they've been down that path the last 4 years. So why would you go down that path again? I mean, oh man, doesn't shock me that Scott Fitterer and Dave Tepper outbid Indianapolis for that top draft slot. Does not surprise me in a single bit. Scott Fitterer he worked for John Snyder for many years in Green Bay, and John Snyder is one of the best general managers in the league. Scott Fitterer was a guy that I wanted, was one of my picks for GM for Houston at the time before they hired Nick Caserio. So, they just outbid Indianapolis, and they are just stuck, man. Just stuck. I mean, stuck with either going to be taking Anthony Richardson and having that developmental project, and maybe it'll work for them. Who knows? I'm not a big Anthony Richardson fan. I could be completely wrong, and I'm definitely not a Will Levis fan. So, having the leftovers here at that point is just kind of really rough. Now that these two quarterbacks are going to go 1-2 with Stroud and Young, and they're the top two quarterbacks out there. So Tony says, why didn't the Ravens just offer $45 million if they're going to match other offers that really shouldn't be afraid? Well, it sounds like Lamar wants a fully guaranteed deal, and Baltimore is not going to do that. They offered, I think, 133 fully guaranteed at signing, with 180 or 160 in total guarantees on a 5-year deal at $250 million. So I think the league views Deshaun Watson's contract as an outlier. Maybe we'll get to more fully guaranteed contracts beyond rookie deals, beyond Kirk Cousins and Deshaun Watson. But I just don't think the league is ready to continue doling out those contracts. I think the way Baltimore maybe could have done it was have an early vesting rolling guarantee. So what I mean by that, say maybe you do a 5-year deal, $250 million, so $50 million per year. You do say we'll just make it easy for the math, right? So $50 million a year, $150 million guaranteed at signing the first 3 years, right? So what you do is after year 2, when you're heading into year 3, you guarantee year 4. So a year early, you guarantee the year, right? So in year 3, you're guaranteeing year 4. In year 4, you guarantee year 5. So those almost create virtual guarantees because it would cost so much to release the player because of the early vesting guarantees. So that's one way Baltimore could have done it. I think at the end of the day, I think this is just Baltimore saying, look, we've been telling you what your value is. We think our contract is fair. We'll let you negotiate with the market and see what the market comes up with. And then, we'll match it or whatever. But I don't think anybody's going to make an offer. Mama says, hold out till we get. Yeah. Lamar's got his mother, man. No agent. I've never really been a big fan of giving a player crap for not having an agent. As long as you have some sort of consultant representation. Brad and I talked about it on Wednesday. Laramie Tunsil has consultants that help him with his negotiations. The same people help DeAndre Hopkins. The same people help Bobby Wagner. The same people help Roquan Smith. These are not certified NFLPA agents, but they're consultants. So you just pay a consulting fee. You're not paying the standard 3% agent fee. And they can help these players craft and protect themselves with the contracts. And so Lamar, from what it sounds like, Lamar doesn't even have that. And when you have a contract of this size, I mean, can you imagine a GM just calling the player straight up? So calling Lamar and say, "Hey, let's talk contract." I mean, that that's just so abnormal. And not only that, like contract discussions, they get brutal. I mean, things are said that the player probably shouldn't hear. Um, Teams are brutally honest and may even not even say very many glowing things, even though they're trying to get a contract done. But they're trying to do what they can during the negotiation to drive the number down. And sometimes feelings can get hurt. I mean, there's a lot that can. There's so much that goes into it. So, he's got to get some help. He's got to get some consultants or something in there. When do we see movement on Tunsil deal? I don't know. I thought it would be this week once we got out of the combine. I know Caserio was a little perturbed at all the public declarations that Tunsil was making towards the end of last season. We saw a lot of the reports from Aaron Wilson that he wanted to stay. He wanted to be the highest paid tackle. He wanted to be all pro and do all these things. I think that was a little put off for Caserio and the Texans, but hopefully soon, Bez. I mean, I think it needs to be done sooner rather than later. There's, if you didn't see it, go back on the channel after the show's over tonight. Go back about a month. There's a contract building session on Laremy Tunsil and what an extension for him would look like. And I think I have like 8 or 12 million, something like that, in cap savings on the extension for a top of the market left tackle deal. So hopefully the next week or so we see an extension get done. Ben Jones, we talked about that deal, 2-year 20. Dalton, that's way too much money, bud. Maybe that was a typo. Maybe you meant 2.5. So 3% of the guaranteed money or the total value of the deal. So it's 3% of the money earned. Yeah, so that's the player. The agent fee is 3% of money earned through the contract. So if it was fully guaranteed, then yeah, you would theoretically get 3% of that. But it comes through because it's taken out of their paychecks. The 3% fee. So that would be that. I think that's about all I had tonight. I didn't expect to go 53 minutes, but hey, it's all fun. We'll be back on Wednesday for sure. We'll have Mike Meltzer joining the show. Haven't got to chat with Mike in a little while. Get his take on free agency. So Wednesday will be Wednesday night at 9 p.m. That'll be about 5 hours after the new league year has started, and hopefully we'll have some contracts, whether it be just for the Texans or across the league. We'll be in full reaction mode of all the signings. I'll put up the free agency report so y'all can see the same thing that all the media folks see if you're interested in doing that. And so, kind of get a little peek behind the curtains on that. And when you see Albert Breer or Tom Pelissero or somebody saying so-and-so signed for 4 years, this much million, this much guaranteed, here's the signing bonus, they're reading it off of a document. So I'll show you what they're looking at. We'll do that on Wednesday, and then I've got a few more guests in the coming weeks. And just stay tuned in. It's going to be, free agency might be a little bit of a dud overall, but it's going to be exciting for Texans and what's going to happen here. I'm really curious to see how they handle the veteran quarterback position, see how they handle the defense. I'm really hoping they go after Tremaine Edmonds. So if you missed that contract building session, it's on the channels from last Friday night. We did a contract building session on Tremaine Edmonds. Like I said, free agency is a little bit of a dud this year, but there's still a couple big names out there that Texans really could sign to bolster up this defense. Maybe they look at another offensive lineman. Hopefully they look at center, something like that. But other than that, man, stay tuned in. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down low. Hit that like button. Follow me on Twitter at Texans Cap. Trying to pump out as much as I can over there as well. My fingers are going to be burning. I'm going to be rocking through contracts on overthecap.com as Jason and I try to update as much as we can. Other than that, I think that's about it. Appreciate everybody joining in. Well, Dalton's got one more question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how active will we be in free agency? So 6. They've got to sign a lot of players. They only have 55 players under contract for 2023. So you still got to fill out a 90-man roster. So you got to expect another. So what if it's 10, 12 draft picks? So that's 65, 67, another 10 free agents, 77. So, you're looking at a dozen free agent signings more than likely. So, and that's if they don't even release any more players. Like, they might release Christian Kirksey. I think Eric Murray will probably end up sticking around. Just see if they do any more subtractions. Maybe they can get Okoronkwo back. Maybe they get Tavierre Thomas back. Doesn't sound like the Tavierre Thomas thing may happen. He seems to be talking to a few other teams, part of that illegal tampering stuff. But they're going to be quantity again for sure, Dalton. Aggressiveness is maybe what you're asking for. I think that number might be a little bit lower, but quantity-wise, they're going to be just as busy. So I'll be pulling out my hair, what little hair I have left. We'll be pulling out what I have. So I appreciate everybody joining in. I appreciate all the questions. Appreciate the comments. Always enjoy doing these. I love the interactions. I enjoy chatting with everybody. You got any questions, shoot me an email, troy@overthecap.com. Send me a message on Twitter. Happy to answer whenever I can. Try to do the best I can to answer what I can. But other than that, everybody have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm sure we'll get some more news over the weekend. So tune in, and we will see y'all probably Wednesday. Mike Meltzer will be our next guest. And with that, we'll have a wonderful weekend, and we'll shut it down. Thanks.